what's good, people? Izzy Max here, back for week 1, season 3 of the Max Doubles League. And this is going to be a little bit different. I am joined with Ryan, of course. Say hello.
Hey.
And then I am joined with our new casting crew for the Red Division, Johnny. What's up, man?
Hey, how's it going?
So this is a new thing. You'll see the other divisions come up probably later today or tomorrow. And they'll go through however they're going to do it. These are probably going to be 2 very different styles of breakdowns, but this is kind of what we've settled with. It's easy to edit and all that. But without further ado, we'll go ahead and get started. We are only going to have 2 games this week because the third one had to get postponed. So next week we'll end up having 4 games. So this one's going to be relatively quick. But for our first game is going to be me versus Burst. I ended up winning with a 6-0 differential. But I'll go ahead and let these 2 take control of this one. So go right ahead.
Yeah, is it okay if I start, Tommy?
Go ahead.
So on Maxwell's side, we see the Sand mode with Dracovish Gigalith. We see the Toxicity coming out, which I thought was a really smart play because it had a very good matchup. A Halucha, Tapu Lele, and Tangrowth on Burst side. We see sort of, I think, the core of Burst's team, which is sort of the Mesprit, Urshifu, Talonflame, Togetic, Magnezone, Finny. When I was looking in preview, I was thinking Maxwell has a Sand mode and his Unburdened Lucha option. When I was looking at Burst in preview, I was like, well, he has the Fast Tailwind with like the Magnezone, and then he also has a Counter Trick Room mode with like the Mesprit. Those were my first impressions when I saw these in preview. What about yourself?
Yeah, kind of the same thing. I was really surprised not to see the Urshifu come out in the game because I thought for sure I'd see like a Talonflame Urshifu lead because of course you can see the fish on the other side with the Gigalith. Yeah, that's what I was kind of expecting here. I was kind of expecting like a battle of, like the Tailwind / the speed, right?
All right. I don't think you can outspeed Dracovish under Tailwind with Urshifu, but I'd have to calc that.
Dracovish is only base 75, so it 100% can.
Oh, it actually can. Okay.
Urshifu is 97, and I think Tapu Finny is 85, so it all outspeeds it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, kind of my thoughts going into this was kind of the same thing Johnny just said. I was really expecting a Talonflame Urshifu hard lead.
Yeah.
But I didn't, which was fine. And then in game 2, I was expecting the same thing, but I seen a Talonflame Togetic lead, and we'll get to you guys breaking down with your notes, but just kind of my 2 cents was that was way too passive. Talonflame is guaranteed to get the Tailwind up, so there's no need for Togetic to be right next to it. Something I was expecting, kind of like a game flow type thing, because I'm very flowcharty, was Talonflame, Urshifu, Talonflame goes down, you get out Togetic, Urshifu is still doing work behind a Follow Me. But that didn't quite work out. I mean, I don't have Fake Out on my team, so, that was kind of my thoughts on that. But going into y'all's notes, Ryan, what are some of these notes you took, and explain why these were important for the game?
Yeah, Sand mode was extremely effective in the game 1. You proved how good the Sand mode can be. That was something a couple coaches had questions about with your comp, so it was nice to see it actually come out game 1 swinging. Okay, so the red card tech was really interesting, but it was very abusable. Because you don't, first off, if you're going to do the red card thing, I don't think Magnezone's the right mon, because Magnezone needs like an air balloon or something, especially in this matchup. Because it was super weak to Quakes and close combats and all that kind of stuff. And the other thing is that red card can be used against you, because you'll see in the game 2 that because Maxwell knew about the red card in game 2, he purposely used that to get a free switch, which isn't something you necessarily want to set up for your opponents. I thought the Max Mesprit was surprisingly solid on Burst Send. I kind of liked it. It worked out okay. And I actually think one of the coolest ways I've seen someone lock an endgame was a Yond Palucha setting Sand to basically try to basically guaranteed the win con, which was really cool because you don't get much out of your Max in theory, but you set the Sand so the Dracovish can guaranteed pull out the end game, which I thought was really cool. One thing I didn't put in my notes, but I should have, was that one of the criticisms I had of Burst's team was that I thought it wasn't offensive enough. And I thought it could end up being very passive. I do think this game showcases that. I thought his team wasn't always putting pressure on in ways that it really needed to, especially against a team as offensive as Maxwell's, which is all about the offense.
Right. And yeah, to piggyback off of those comments, I mean, my first is that Burst team is a little too defensive. Well, at least the Finney was. So I was watching the match, and he was saying that he didn't have any good answers to the fish. And I mean, Finney's a perfectly good one if it was more offensive, right? And you've got some okay switch-ins like Magnezone and Piloswine and Sceptile, kind of Sceptile. But yeah, I was a little surprised not to see stuff like Unburdened Sceptile with the different terrains, or Urshifu and stuff. But yeah, it was just not as offensive against Maxwell, which is a very offensive opponent, right? You have to kind of out-offense him sometimes. And this was definitely a match for that. And speaking of red card, I actually ran red card at Collinsville when I competed, back when we did live competitions. And red card is super hard to use. It's really great if you've got a mon that is probably going to be faked out most of the time, so you can punish the opponent, but it's really, really tough to run in a Dynamax format. I really like the Togetic. I mean, gosh, it took a million hits and barely went down when it got hit by an overdrive and a rock slide and stuff. And
Togetic's a beast, man.
Oh my gosh. So that was really great on bursts. And oh, sorry. Yeah. Go ahead, Ryan.
Yeah, no, you're good. I should have let you finish.
But gosh, yeah, so just, could have been more aggressive on bursts because he's got a lot of really cool tools, especially, I mean, Urshifu. Every time I see a Urshifu, I'm shaking in my boots because, if I try to do a protect, it doesn't work out. And then finally, of course, I really love Gigalith. I ran that in season 1. It's such a great mon. And I mean, with that, Maxwell was always in the end game when he brought in Gigalith with having that sand up, even to the detriment of being in and falling asleep with Hawlucha, right? But I mean, it was always having that sand up and taking control of that was really good on Maxwell's end.
Yeah, that just solid blocking the game.
Yeah. So before we move on, I do want to kind of touch on some of the things that we've heard in game chat after this. The energy ball read from into the Hawlucha, the max overgrow, 100% the right read. If I would have brought Gigalith and I didn't have Rock Slide, you 100% called that correctly.
Right.
But that wasn't my play. Also, Ryan, since me and you kind of talked about these, talk about some of the things that he thought were misplays, because I do want to kind of clear some of that up. Coming from multiple, I'm going to kind of gloat, top-tier players in this league, we've all kind of come to a consensus on some of the things that he thought he misplayed on. So what were the thoughts on that?
The energy ball wasn't a misplay. I'm trying to think specifically, because we talked about it 5 minutes ago, and I'm blanking.
The Talonflame, game 2.
Yeah, the Talonflame wasn't a misplay. It was just...
Oh, did I lose it?
It was just red. Yeah, sorry.
Yeah, the couple of us guys who were talking, the Tailwind was 100% the correct play.
Yeah, you always Tailwind there. It was just that you should have... The Tailwind was always the right play. You just... The misplay was that you should never lead Togetic Talonflame.
Especially against someone who doesn't have Fake Out.
Right. He didn't have any way to... Maxwell didn't have any way to stop your Tailwind in that instance, so it's the Tailwind on the Talonflame was 100% correct. It was that you needed something else next to it, probably Magnezone or Urshifu. I'd lean Urshifu in that case. So yeah, that's sort of how that should have looked. The misplay was not clicking Tailwind there, because Tailwind's really solid against Maxwell's squad, especially with what you have.
Mm-hmm. For sure. And like I said, I just wanted to clear some of that up because I know they were talking about that was a big misplay, and we all kind of disagree, but that's what it is.
One thing real quick.
Yeah.
I want to touch on the red card. Red card's really, really cool. One thing with it that you need to remember is that this is best of 3, and red card only works in a best of 1. And that's all coaches. I mean, red card can be good in a best of 3 setting, but if you have it, it needs to be like, it's not a game 1 break. It is okay, we're hitting game 2, and either I have momentum or I lost momentum, and I know when this red card can come out and can win me the set. So like, you got to be a little bit careful with text like that. Same thing with eject button. Eject button I think is a little more consistent on the whole, but even still, a lot of the times, especially last season when we saw eject button used, it was very purposefully used in late game scenarios. A lot of the time it was used game 2, game 3, sometimes game 1 just to get a quick game 1 win, and then it wasn't brought again, or it was brought different configuration, that kind of thing. I feel like that sort of tech you need to be really careful with in a best of 3.
Yeah, Ryan, if you remember, in the first time we did a VGC league, we actually ran red card Gallade, so when we hit beat up with the Dragapult would switch out into something with a better matchup.
Yep, we did.
Yeah.
Oh well.
Yeah, you can do cool stuff with it. And I love the item. But it's kind of one of those things where I saw the usage of it, and I saw that it was on zone, and I'm sitting here like, that would have been really good on like the Feeny, or that would have really been good on something else kind of in a second game scenario to like just completely throw off Maxwell's game plan.
Oh yeah. And the fact that I hit it with a Gigalith was sad, because then I knew and it just didn't do anything.
Right, because and that's the other thing with red card versus eject. Eject button at least
works.
You switcheroo and it ends max, so it's generally the more consistent item.
Right. So moving on to our second game, our only other game, is Johnny versus Hector. And yes, you are reading that right. That is a +1 loss for John and a -3 win for Hector.
It's really emblematic of that set, honestly.
So Ryan, I'll let you take the lead on this one again. Go ahead.
Yeah. So the first thing that really struck me about this was that no one brought. Okay, Hector has a Lecky, which is one of his 2 tier 1s. Johnny has none of his tier 1s, and then it's just like, here is my tier 4s and 5s and 3s, and that's like the entire comp for both players, basically. And there's just some interesting stuff here. So we see Aurorus, Alolan Dugtrio, Owen Wilson, Fletchender, which I think was a very good bring here, Regirock, Suicune, and Hitmonlee. Hector's end, we have, I think, more of a traditional top 3, Aerodactyl, Klefki, Alecki, stuff I would expect to see. But then we have the Maractus, the Turtonator, and the Weezing. I do think Weezing was a good bring because it's a nice counter to a couple of things John has, especially that Rillaboom. Sort of. We'll get into that. Generally speaking, just very interesting Mon brings on both sides. Maxwell, what did you think?
I'm more of a believer in Aurorus than I ever was. I always thought that Mon was just bad. And it did a lot of work. On Hector's side, I just feel like there wasn't a whole lot of offense. And this is going to sound mean, but like, he really only won it because of Maractus and the lack of checks.
All things.
Yeah, the lack of checks that Johnny actually had, because who looks at the matchup and says, yeah, Maractus is a threat? So like, I mean,
Maractus was his best Regirock counter.
I don't blame Hector for bringing it, but like, I also don't blame Johnny for not prepping too hard for it. That being said, though, one thing I did want to say that's not in my notes, and I'll go ahead and say it now, is that Fletchender probably should have had another attack on it, but I understand why Defog was really important. So I'm kind of 50-50 on that one. Johnny, what did you think seeing in these games, I guess?
I was in a constant state of shock. No. Yeah, it was really interesting. Gosh, when I opened up and I saw the Maractus, because I, like, not in my wildest dreams thought he'd bring it. I thought it was kind of like, oh, I got a tier 5 pick. I chose Maractus. But now he turns out that my whole team, almost my whole team, is weak to grass. So, I mean, that was an incredible bring. But yeah, just the whole time, I was really on edge because I knew that like Aerodactyl and Regieleki could do like huge damage to me. But gosh, in game 2, I was blown away because I get through the first 3 Mons and then Maractus comes out. And if you watched my video, I said, I got nothing. And then it was a 1v3 with Maractus,
Yeah. Things I never thought I'd say.
No.
Or hear.
No,
Yeah.
100%.
It was such a weird set in a lot of ways. We'll kind of get into that, though. We can move on to the notes, I think.
Yeah, so I'll go ahead and start with my notes. Both teams super creative. I loved seeing, again, some of the more obscure Mons, and some of the prep was really, really good. Seeing like all the EV spreads and the items, I thought was really, really cool. No answer to Maractus late. And I think, Johnny, you messed up on your Tailwind turns.
Oh, yeah, totally. I mean, I forgot I had one near, I think it was game 2 or something.
Yeah.
I forgot I had. Yeah.
And then Hector had great pivot. It was a great pivot into Maractus for game 2 and 3. And the defensive play really allowed him to get Maractus into a winning situation, as weird as that sounds. And it was just kind of a lock as soon as that thing hit the field. One thing I do want to ask, Johnny, why did you not pivot into the Hitmonlee?
Gosh, what game was that? Well, I only brought Hitmonlee, I think, to the first game. But yeah, I just thought I had enough offensive pressure with Auroras and then I think Doug Trio, if I remember right.
Yeah. Okay. Yep, that's all I wanted. All right, Ryan.
One thing I noted on the last slide, and I'm going to note again, was there was a lack of top tier picks on both sides, which I think actually plays more into my last point, which is that both of your teams had a lot of major type weaknesses. And part of me is like, I know that, like, I've seen both you and Hector play, so I know that part of it is that I should just expect squads like these, because you're both just kind of like that, and you'll just bring whatever and it'll be fine. But I do actually think the type weaknesses played a major factor in prep. I think Hector realized that some of his top tier stuff wouldn't work against some of your stuff, and that Regirock was a huge problem. And I think that you realized that some of Hector's stuff kind of booped your Rillaboom and a few of your other top tier picks. So I think that the comps that we saw aren't surprising. I think once I realized that Hector's trying to cover a big rock ground weakness and you're trying to cover for this steel and grass and all these other things that you're kind of having a tougher time dealing with. So it makes sense. I actually do think Rillaboom would have been really good on your side, Johnny, because even if he brings Wheezing, it'll likely be neutralizing gas for your team, and then you can just like max Quake it. Like if you had brought like a fairly standard Rillaboom set, like Grassy Glide, knockoff kind of high horsepower or even acrobatics, I actually think your Maractus matchup would have been pretty good, which is the weirdest thing I've ever said, I know. I really liked both the Maractus and the Auroras in this set. They did a ton of work. Auroras, they both surprised me a lot. The Maractus surprised me in how much damage it was outputting, and the Auroras was a monster. I'm much more afraid of Auroras than I am Maractus at the moment. But I thought Hector pivoted really well. After that game 1 loss, I was like, I'm not sure how he claws back from this. And then he just really, really showed, I think, why he's such a good player, is that pivot into the Maractus and that pivot into that more defensive play was a really, really, really good showing. That kind of thing is really difficult to do on the spot. And he did a wonderful job of it. So major props to Hector for that. I was really impressed.
For sure. And like we said, this is our last game. Usually there's going to be 3 games a week. But Who is it? Dark and Grant are playing Monday night. So that, again, will be on our next week's slide. Neither of us three have a bye next week, so you'll see us talking about our own games again. But, Johnny, any last words before we kind of close out?
Maractus is a threat, so everyone please watch out.
Ryan?
I have to admit, kind of a weird start to the season. Only 2 games to cover. Hope y'all like the new intro for the video.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Other than that, not a whole lot really to say. Next week will be a much longer, I think, a little bit more in-depth video. This week, these 2 sets were both kind of weird ones to get super into. I felt like, so
Yeah.
we'll hopefully have something a little bit more substantial for the next one.
Next week, Johnny's going to have his first solo comm because me and you play each other. So that's going to be all Johnny for that match. So we'll see we'll see where that one goes. But without further ado, guys, we will see you in the next one. Peace.